of Behind the Ballot. And today we have some interesting topics to talk about, starting with the Democratic strategies for the 2026 midterms, looking at Trump's approval rating, and then also the Trump administration's recent actions and controversies. And sadly, the tragic events that happened at the Minneapolis school shooting today.
May they rest in peace.
Yeah, that's a crime in itself for that it happened, and hopefully there is strong action that's taken as a result of what has happened. It's
Knowing the
tragic to see
Democrats
something
are
like
going to
that.
blame guns and not mental health.
Right. So it's sad to see lives lost, and I believe he did commit suicide. We're going to touch on this more, but just want to get that out first to say sad to hear what's going on in Minneapolis, and we do hope there do comes clarity soon for those individuals that have lost their lives. And now to get into the Democratic strategies for the 2026 midterm, some interesting things that have been developing. Democrats are actively preparing for 2026, leveraging
The-
recent gains and also polling trends, as we've seen, as we talked about on this podcast. What are you gonna say,
yeah.
Mohammed?
I was going to say Trump is literally giving the Democrats explosive ammunition to use for the midterms. And
Yeah,
if
no,
they don't use it, I'd think even lesser of these people than I already do.
yep, exactly. And they have this project 2029, and it's kind of like the same thing as the Republicans had their project 2025. So it's kind of a playbook with policies and pillars on different levels of advocacy that they kind of want to do. So they're kind of like our plans section outlines four pillars targeting electoral gains in 2026 and beyond. And their plans include governance reforms for transparency, economic policies to reduce inequality, um, humanity focused initiatives on healthcare and education, and justice reform for criminals and social equity as well. So I think those are very strong points that they're going to be hitting in the upcoming months and the upcoming year as well. Mohammed,
This
what are
is
your take
the
on those? Yeah,
this.
what
Yeah,
are
I
your
was
take
going to
on
actually
those?
add something to that. This is the thing about Democrats, especially when it comes to crime. You just mentioned. Correct me if I'm wrong, but taking. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Just ran. But you mentioned about how part of the Democratic strategy playbook is to essentially, take a focus on the mental health slash societal aspect of why things are happening and kind of getting to the root of it. And one of the big things that some Democrats do terribly, like the city council in D.C., some of them do
Yeah,
it very good, like Brandon Scott, the mayor of Baltimore. And it's that the whole idea of how do we punish the youth, and they in DC, this is a big thing that Trump's been bragging about since he deployed
yeah,
the National Guard is no homicides in 2 weeks. And for those who have been to DC, in the city, like the federal capital, you'll see people drugged out just doing dumb shit. You know what I mean? Like when I went to DC the other week, I saw a cracked out white dude screaming the hard R for literally 5 minutes straight. You
yeah.
know
It's
what I mean?
crazy.
I'm like,
It's
any
crazy.
other country, this guy would be thrown in a van, taken to somewhere. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that we should take these people and take away their human, not even their human rights, but their freedom in that sense. But something does need to be done. Now when it comes to the issue of the homeless and the youth, so in America right now, actually Baltimore is I live in Baltimore. This is a very good example of how the national trend crime rate is going. More young people are committing violent crime than compared to the older generation than ever
Yeah,
before. And in Baltimore, actually, a majority of the crime is committed by children, and which is crazy to say. Crazy to say that most of the homicides, most of the carjackings, most of the assaults are done by literal children, 15, 16-year olds, even as young as 12 sometimes. In DC, a few months ago, a 12-year-old child got shot because they were
Yeah,
trying
I
to
saw that.
carjack an off-duty police officer. And that was the fifth time that 12-year-old got caught carjacking. And every time before that, when they were caught, arrested, the city council and the DA would be like, "Oh, they're just a kid, let him go." And then what is that guy doing? What is that child doing again? They're back on the street carjacking people with pistols.
Yeah,
So
it's a
it really
constant
brings up the,
cycle.
yeah, it's a cycle. And if you don't take them out of that cycle forcibly, they're just going to repeat the same mistake again and again. And a big thing about United States crime is that most of the crime is committed by repeat offenders. So, like, most Americans don't commit crime. That's just a really easy way to look at it. Most Americans aren't violent. Most Americans aren't thieves. Most Americans aren't trying to carjack somebody or pistol whip somebody just because they said the wrong thing to them. And really, there's Pareto's principle is actually a very good way of looking at this because it's actually always applicable to many, many things. And it's that 20% of the population causes 80% of the issues, or let's say 20% of the ingredients give 80% of the flavor. You know, like the spices you put in. 20% of the population commits 80% of the crime. Now, it's not an exact perfect comparison, but it's anytime you look at a stat, it'll be in that ballpark. It's fascinating. But the reason why I bring this up is because literally 1/5 of the population is what keeps committing the consistent violent and nonviolent crimes. And in America, we see that violent crimes are down to a 20, 30, 40-year low across the country. But people in the country feel like crime has been skyrocketing. And
Right.
for the reason, visible crime has been skyrocketing. Homeless people on the streets, crackheads on the streets, people stealing from stores, XYZ, things that aren't violent, but things that do affect society and things that are visible and affect people how they feel about where they live.
Exactly.
And so the Democrats have really taken a backpedal approach to this all. They see the homeless crackheads. They think, oh, we need to give them rehab, be easy with them. No, you need to take these people off the street, forcibly put them in rehab for 2 years,
Yeah.
force these people to work and stay off of drugs until they're fully back on their feet, and then they can get in their own place, enjoy the benefits of being a free citizen. But you
Right.
lose
Exactly.
that privilege once you're on the street, snorting, snorting coke. That's too much of a rich drug for the homeless. Injecting crack, smoking crack, XYZ, and it gets to the point where we have to actually force these people into a certain responsibility. Because for those who haven't dealt with addiction is a massive pain in the ass.
Massive.
That's the easiest way to put it. And these people that are living on the street homeless, addicted to drugs, they're there because they're addicted to drugs. There's a big difference between being homeless because you're just down on your luck. You lost your house because of a bad property feud. You broke your leg and you couldn't get disability. There's a few actual viable reasons why a homeless man, someone might end up on the street due to non-drug related reasons. In America, it's almost always though drug related reasons.
Yeah. It's
And
gonna. Yeah, I was gonna say
do
it's
you
gonna
want to
be
add something on, Joe?
interesting, kind of like how the receptiveness has been in DC, and if actually he goes forth with mobilizing National Guard and also New York and Chicago, how that's going to be received by the residents that live in those areas. Because online you see people talk about how it's great that now you can drive down with your windows down. You can go out late at night in DC without having to be worried about being heckled or things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I do agree in that sense, and I think I was talking on this on the last episode that it's important that we do remove them in a sense from their encampments is what it's called. It's like removing them from them shouldn't be something that's frowned upon in a
At
sense.
all.
I feel like it beautifies the area, and it speaks to the broken window theory that we've talked about on here. And I
That's a
think
very valid theory too.
yeah, and you take them, put them in rehabilitation. They get rehabilitated while also within rehabilitation, as you're saying, for 2 years. Those 2 years, attend county college, get your credential, go to an industry, do better from there. But once you get out, you also will have, you got to have check-ins with, whatever agency is going to be the agency that would oversee those operations. Like you can't just be let loose after 2 years and thinking that you're okay, because sometimes you need to have those constant check-ins to make sure that you're staying right on on the sober path, basically
It's
on the right
very
path.
easy to slip
It's
back
very
into
very easy
drugs.
to slip. That's why
Very
having
easy.
it's easy to slip when just come out of, like, whether it's jail or whether it's from an area to get clean, to fall back into if you don't have those constant contact supports to be able to walk you through and be able to check up on you when you're going through hard times. And I feel like that is something that's been plaguing throughout every major city within the United States. And this initiative, in a way, should actually have legislators start thinking about, all right, how can I turn this tyrannicalness into actual a progressive style piece of legislation, kind of like what we've just talked about now. But it's things that Democrats can learn from this, not in taking it and agreeing with it and not doing anything about it, but actually pulling certain policy pieces from it and making good things from it, actually.
No, I agree. And I mean, I think the big thing about the Democrats is they're afraid to do anything that actually is changing anything. I always
Hmm.
view the Democrats as the party of the status quo, really. Like, we see the Republicans always try to change things massively when they're in office. I mean, most of the deficits have been in place when Republicans come in because they're changing so much economic and tax policy, largely tax policy in benefit of the rich. And we see, even especially with Trump, wielding the executive power to do and change whatever he can as he can. And the Democrats, on the other hand, Obama, I was fairly young when Obama was around, but during that first term, first 2 years of Obama, they did get quite a bit done. But when you look at what the Democratic playbook really was, abortion didn't get codified when they could have done it. Tax cuts weren't given to the poor when they could have been. Where were these? The most progressive policy was, the Affordable Care Act, which wasn't even Medicare for all, but more so government subsidized private health care
Yep.
that forces people to. It's complicated. I
Yeah, I
don't know
think
as
that
much
was
as
like his
ACA as I should,
yeah, I
honestly.
think that was his biggest piece. And then that's when he had if his first term, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was lame duck in both terms. And his first two, he got, and if I'm not mistaken, I think his first 2 years is
First
when
two
he's
years of his
got,
first term, I believe.
yeah, that's when he got Medicare for all done. Not Medicare for all, Obamacare done within his first 2 years. Then he had lame duck just from all the expensive political capital it took to get that passed. You got the backlash, midterms and so forth, made him a
Yeah,
lame duck. And then on his reelection, I believe actually that's when he did gay rights, if I'm not mistaken. That
gay
was his first. I
rights.
mean, that doesn't take a legislative means to have that passed or
I'm
anything,
glad they got that put
but that's
into
still
place.
that's still a change. And that's, I mean, it's not a change to the tax code technically, but it now allows same sex marriage couples to reap those tax benefits
Yeah.
that regular couples would have benefited from.
And that's all really what a country recognizing gay marriage is just saying, okay, yeah, we recognize you guys are married for tax reasons. Like,
Right, and I
a
feel like
country can't
that should
tell you
be,
you can't get married. Like,
yeah, it should just be the tax basis is was a genius argument in a way to really put it on the books as being codified by law. So I
yeah.
think it should just stand as is. There is no reason to derail it or to overturn it. Obviously, it's gone too far with how the Democrats have taken it, but
Yeah. Talk about 10 years from
starting,
Obama barely
yeah,
being able to legalize gay marriage to where the Democrats are now, where if you don't agree with everything about the LGBTQ movement, we don't need your vote because you're a bad person.
exactly. So
Astonishing how quickly things change.
yeah, it's pretty astonishing how things flip around so fast.
Hmm.
And then that also goes into kind of how they're trying to peel some of that back in their messaging within Democrats. Within Democrats themselves are starting to get elected, as we saw that Iowa was turned. I don't know if you saw the Senate seat was
I
flipped.
did. That was a big flip.
So that was a big flip. It was held previously, won by 11 points by Trump in the last election. So it's pretty shocking having won that, what I think it was, so it's Senate seat, so winning that district by 11. I think it was 11.5%, and then the next 2 years losing that seat, in a Democratic and Republican general election race. It's pretty huge and telling as well. Starting in Iowa, because I believe that is the first caucus. So I
Yeah,
think you're going to start to see a lot of these, Trump won high margins in this county, high margins in this district, high margins in this state, but Democrats are winning. And that
and
comes from a lot of the policies that Trump is doing, and also a lot of the actions that he's doing as well. And what him being in the news with Epstein, that whole debacle, still kind of like on his
they're
coattails and
really
biting at
trying
his
so
heels.
hard to put that in
But
the past.
yeah, they're trying to put it down, but I don't think it's going to happen. Voters really want to know about this because obviously it's something that they aggressively ran on, and something that
And
they
the
feel
th-
like they should have a right to get answers for, since they voted for this individual.
And the thing is, what I want to add the most about Maxwell's testimony, not testimony, her talk with the DOJ officials, because she didn't testify in court.
Yeah.
She said Trump wasn't involved at all. She never saw him around doing any bad things. And I know some people would see that, some Trump supporters would see that, be like, see, she's saying he didn't do it. I believe her. She also said Bill Clinton didn't do anything. She
Mhm.
said, I've never seen Bill Clinton do anything wrong either. Bill
Yeah.
Clinton, who was on the plane more than a dozen times, who has a picture of him in a dress in Epstein's house. Bill Clinton, who we all know is quite the debauchery, is she's
Yeah.
saying he's completely innocent as well. I mean, it's clear to, I feel like, anybody involved that she's just saying what she needs to say in order to get out and be safe. You know
Oh,
what I
of
mean?
course.
To like cash in that favor, like, oh hey, I did my part. Let me get out now. And I think that if someone actually does take her seriously, that, I mean, it's just a matter. This is what politics is about. You know what I mean? People sell them. I say sell their soul. You sell your morals. You know what I mean? That's what selling your soul is. Selling
Yeah.
your morals for a value. People sell their morals just so their politician that they like more can win. You know, I know a lot of people who sold their morals just to vote Trump because they hated the left so much. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, I don't care. No matter how much I hate what the left's saying, I'm not going to vote Trump. I voted Libertarian. And, it's a very common thing to see in politics. And that's a big part of why the two party system is set up this way. Because they're thinking, well, if we can get them to hate the other party, then even if they don't like us,
They'll still just
as
vote
long
for
as
us.
they
Yeah.
hate the other party
Yeah.
more than they don't like us, we'll get their vote. Which is
Yep.
exactly what happened with quite a few Trump voters this year. I mean, even now already, there was a 50% swing among Hispanic and black men towards Trump. Be- because of what all the things that Democrats were saying in regards to LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Biden famously saying, "If you don't vote for me, you're not black," which is funny because Trump said the opposite thing about Jewish people, and funny how politicians work out.
Yeah.
But we saw this massive pushover from men of all age ranges towards the right side because they just simply hated what the left was saying that much. And I'm sure these Hispanic and black men knew that Trump wasn't going to keep them in top of their priority list. You know what I mean? We've heard Trump went really hard against the Central Park Five, trying to get them the death penalty when they were
Right.
innocent. Trump has multiple times said many racist things about Hispanics and black people and basically everyone who isn't white. He's even said racist things about white people, let's be honest. And it's just that he's a money guy. The only thing
Right.
Trump respects is money and status. If you're a poor white guy, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't. And I think what we're going to really be seeing in this election, the 2026 coming up, is people now hate Trump so much that they're willing to vote Democrats even though they don't like the Democrats. And we're
Yeah. And
seeing
we're
that with the
seeing that.
polling as well.
Yeah, we definitely are seeing that with the polling. Trump's second term approval, hits very new lows. I think it's like 34%, I
Oh my
believe.
god!
So
Oh
that
my
maybe
god!
37, I believe. Yeah. So
I don't know what the lowest approval
Quinnipiac.
rating of a president in history is.
So it was a Quinnipiac University poll from August 21st to August 25. Had 1,200 registered voters take the poll, showing Trump's approval rating at 37%, down 3 from July, and his disapproval at 55% of 1, making it his lowest second term rating yet. So 37% that's almost like where I think Joe Biden numbers were hitting at. Like, not even, I don't think, this early
And
in
the
his
thing
first
is,
term.
Trump and Biden both won the popular vote.
They both did. And the thing with, like, as we were talking about some of the issues that Trump is, aggressively dealing with, his net approval on some of those issues is actually going down. Like on crime, this is all from Gallup poll. So crime, he's down -12. Foreign policy, down -16. Economy, down -16.
Yeah,
So
for good
this is
reason.
a broader dissatisfaction from what he was saying from his inauguration and January to all the way now. So I think this is really driving those independents into those more left leaning camps compared to more to right leaning camps, as we saw when it was Biden that was in
Yeah,
office. It's
yeah,
independents that will usually be the ones to decide most races, especially at the federal level.
yeah,
um, they are the ones that are like those undecided voters that really can, depending upon what happens in the last few days running up to the general election, can decide who gets past the post and wins. So I think we're going to see more of these declines, honestly, unless Trump is able to clean up a lot of his act. Especially with a lot of things that he's done recently, like moving into the Trump administration's actions and controversies, the
yeah.
allowing the 600,000 Chinese students. Like, I,
This is the
I don't
thing.
understand the
I personally am all
like
for, the brain drain of other countries. Like I am, that's one of
so
my
much.
favorite things about America. We take the brightest people from other countries. We don't even need to train them, teach them, raise them. You know what I mean? They just come here
Exactly.
smart as hell and we benefit from it. They pay us money, we benefit from it. They do make
Exactly.
us new technology, we benefit from it. But Trump's base doesn't like that.
No.
Trump's base sees it as these people coming in, taking opportunities that Americans could have had, which isn't fully true, but is partially true because, yeah, you can argue, if there was less there, the more Americans would definitely get those positions. But it's the net positive is greater because what I think it does is bringing in these foreign students is that I know plenty of foreign students. I've met plenty. I haven't met a single American who wanted to go to college who didn't. And
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
I know some people might say like, "Oh, well, those Chinese students going to Harvard reduces the chances of an American going to Harvard." It doesn't matter what school you go to. It matters what you do with your education. And I know a few people, that went to the same school that me and you did, your college.
Yep.
And I know some of these people who got a full ride to a Villanova master's program and then got a position working for the Federal Reserve Bank out of YCP, York College, Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? That's something you'd expect from somebody who is, at like a higher echelon school to get a work job immediately out of college at the Federal Reserve Bank. But he was just a very ambitious and smart young man, but he was at a non-top 15 competitive school. But he got in one of those very exclusive positions because he wanted it. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what school you go to, unless the only thing that matters about what school you go to is networking. I swear to
Yeah,
God,
basically.
if that's the only thing MBAs are for is networking. And if you are in a position where you want to go to Harvard, Yale, for law, that's reasonable. But the main thing you're going to be doing there is networking. You know what I mean?
I would
The
definitely agree.
education you will get at some of these top law schools is going to maybe a little bit better than at some of the non-top law schools, but you can achieve the same thing as the people who go to those top schools. It's not like oh, I didn't go to Harvard, now my life is over situation. It's I got into college, let's go see what I can do. And so Trump supporters don't feel like that. They see this as an ability of taking these positions and opportunities away from Americans that they could have had. So when Trump says we're bringing in 800,000 Chinese students, his supporters are saying, what the hell?
Right.
We didn't want more of this. We didn't. We voted for you so we'd have less of this. So not only is Trump already rightfully pissed off a lot of independents who are now going to vote liberal, Democrat in the upcoming elections, he's even pissing off his own base who is now going to say, I don't want to vote for this kind of Republican. You know what I
I think
mean?
it's understandable too, because if I'm not mistaken, there was a Chinese student that was just found to be a spy.
Oh yeah,
That was
but
just
dude, if we're
recently.
going to be talking about
And
ties, we
then
need to focus on
and
Israel
then
first.
I agree with that, but it's also like it's a pattern of what was done that kind of led up to this. I know this is kind of like allowing these 600,000 Chinese students is more of like a U.S. trade talks. It's part of that, but this is a pattern because you saw he started with affirmative action because it was Chinese students that brought the case, and now you're allowing 600,000 Chinese students into American universities. So it's always
I
interesting
want to
to tie what he's doing, what he's done before, to what he's doing now, kind of how the two are kind of connective in a sense.
I want to add this about affirmative action, which I think is hilarious. The top benefiter of affirmative action was white
Yeah,
women. White woman. And also, if you were to scrap affirmative action and only let in students based off SAT test scores and nothing else, minority populations in those top colleges would nearly double. Like African Americans would go from like 2 to 4 to like 3 to 6, 2 to 4. Asians would go up even more because they're damn smart at what
yeah,
they do. And then the group that would benefit the least would be white Americans, the white folk.
yeah,
And then I just think it's interesting to see how policies can have unintended consequences from their original goals, which I think is a very important thing when you do discuss policy and what it does. Just because it says, "Oh, this is our goal," doesn't mean that's exactly what it's doing. Like Section 8 housing's goal might be to get more people off the street, but then it takes 4 years to get 3 4 years to get into Section 8 housing, and that entire time, you're in the position of, should I get a home? Should I rent? Should I waste this money, or should I just wait and see what'll happen? Should I sign up for a leasing contract? But what if I get Section 8 around the time that I still have the lease and I won't have the money to afford the lease? XYZ reasons. And I think affirmative action is a great example of that. This was clearly intended to help the poor
yeah,
minorities, you know what I mean, or just the minorities in general. And then it ended up benefiting white women the most. And I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. I do think that more. I do, but I will. What I will say is, I think that people should be let in colleges based off sheerly intellect alone and
yeah.
nothing
Without a
else.
doubt, intellect a lot, and it's just interesting just connecting those two pieces for our listeners so that they can continue to understand the patterns and how these Trump policies all string together and one big line, and not one thing that he's doing is absent from something else that he's planning to do as well, like firing the trying to fire the Fed gov, no,
Jerome
the Fed
Powell.
gov, Lisa Cook.
Oh, the
Yeah,
yeah,
and
the
then the
gov.
dollar plummeting after that as well. Like I know he can't
The
like
thing is, Trump wants a weak
yeah, he
dollar,
does
though.
exactly. So like this is like back to that pattern I was just talking about. These things are all stringing together. He wants to weak dollar, so this is how he's now going to get it from firing her. The dollar plummeted, um, but he technically can't fire her in a sense.
No, yeah, he doesn't have
So
the
yeah, he
right,
doesn't
the
have the
privilege,
right.
the authority.
So they're going to take legal action against the Trump administration over this firing. And Fed Governor Lisa Cook has said that she's just going to continue her duties as is, which I think anyone would do in that sense. So respectable of her. And unfortunately, these
Yeah.
are the optics that she has to be under for her job. It's a lot. It's really a lot.
And the thing is, what a lot of people are being annoyed by Trump is that he's taking this direct government involvement in the private equity market, not the private equity market, the private markets, I should just say. And we see him also try to strong arm the Fed, and we've also now seen him try to strong arm companies like Intel.
More to come.
And it's so interesting to me, the horseshoe theory, how real it is here. We've seen in America, we all know, communism is literally talked about like some kind of evil from the past. You know what I
Literally,
mean? And I hate
yes.
communism, but I have my family has direct experience with communism, so I know more about it more than than a lot of Americans. And just based off of that anecdotal experience of how my family went through it. And I gotta say, it's fascinating to me to see the Republicans who hate the red. I'd rather be dead than red. You know what I mean? Now go to owning companies, owning stakes in companies, for the government. And the fact is, the government has done plans before in the
Yeah,
past
Yeah,
under Obama when the Great
it was an
Recession
emergency
happened,
situation.
where they bailed out companies in exchange for stake ownership, which then the companies bought back from them in essentially like a loan plan.
Yeah.
Now, it remains to be seen. Trump has indicated that that's overall what the goal is to then get Intel to buy that back. But two things remain to be seen now. One, is that actually what's going to happen? Because we've seen Trump say a lot of things and do a lot of other things. And two, Trump has also said he wants to take ownership of more
Mhm.
companies. So is this just the beginning of the government claiming ownership using policy as a means of why the companies owe them that stake of ownership in the company? Or is this just Trump trying to be a strong arm and, somehow I don't even know. I honestly don't see what other goal it could be aside from the government taking
So
control
like
of
as I'm
companies.
like
Like
sitting
I can,
here, like thinking about it more and more and more in a sense, like as it's kind of funny how literally when we got done, I think what was it the last podcast or the one podcast we actually started talking about how he was going to go into different companies. It literally dropped that he was going to go into different companies right when we got done. I think
yeah,
what's going to happen is I think he's going to go into not just the chip manufacturing industry. He's going to go after the defense contract industry as well. And then I think what's going to be next after that is going to be the AI industry under the pretext of security in a sense. And then once that pretext is kind of just accepted from individuals in his cabinet, voters as well as bureaucrats and economists as well. If it's something that's received with not a lot of pushback, I could see him stretching that definition to go into pharmaceuticals and things of that nature, where you can't sell your medicine to certain areas of the world or things of that nature unless we get x amount of of stake from your company or x amount of revenue from your company from these cells specifically or things of that nature. I really see this is where things are going to be headed in the long run. Obviously, depending upon
uh,
how I mean, I do hope more Democrats stand up to this and more economists speak out about this because this is a very dangerous
dude,
track. That, as I said, the
it's
next president really has a lot of leeway to what they can do if they come in and just sweep across the board electorally.
yeah. And this is the thing. What I want, why we were talking earlier about how the Democrats have massive ammunition to go against Trump. You can literally say this
It's
is
literally,
communist.
I think Lutnick said
You
it
can
was,
literally go on
yeah,
TV and say, look at Comrade Trump taking ownership of the private companies, seizing the means of production with the government. Everybody hail Comrade
taking
Trump.
over the
You know what
cities,
I mean? You can look.
trying to jail political opponents,
Yeah, right. You can live. There's so much segue,
bribes.
ignoring the judges and doing what he wants
Mhm.
anyway. You know
Yeah,
what I
it's
mean?
a.
And I just don't think the Democrats have the backbone. No, I don't. This is the thing. I
I
don't
know
know if
who
they
does
don't have the
though.
backbone.
I say I know who
What'd you
does
say?
though.
Who?
MAGA, make America Gavin again.
Make America Gavin again. That's funny. Damn, I've liked what he's been doing, but honestly, it's about time somebody would just
Someone needs a
bothering
backbone
Trump
to
with the same
step
shit
up
he
and just
bothers
be
everybody else
like
with.
what the f is this guy doing? This is America
Right,
last.
right.
Like
I'm like,
what's going on? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing a good job, but she isolated herself out so much to be such a MAGA backer that it's kind of like, well, I mean, you loved them, you know, 2 3 years ago. Like you can probably deal with this. You'll be all right. It's kind of like we need a different champion that's going to be able to effectively point to, look at what he said he wouldn't do. Now look what he's doing. Concessions to Russia,
yeah.
concessions to China, taking over stake in companies. Put
Saying he'd have the Ukraine war done in the first day,
right,
and now he just
conceding
authorized
to
billions
Israel
more.
and proving the iron grip that the Israeli government has on the United States.
Oh my god, that's the craziest thing of all to me. Just how open, what's the saying go? How much the mask has
Oh,
fallen
the mask
off.
is
The
way.
mask is completely off with this. Like everybody can see clearer than ever. Israel controls the United States
Literally.
government. And I mean, we got the other earlier today. The thing is, Israel not only controls the government, they control the mainstream media. And I'll use this to segue into a few of the other things that we got
Yeah,
planned
yeah.
to talk about today. But a lot what we talked about in the last podcast episode is how there was that one Tom Alexandrovich, the Israeli pedophile who came over here to try to rape an American child, was caught by the FBI, and then the Trump admin let them go by getting involved. So there was a one of the co-hosts of the Young Turks, Anne
That's a good show. It's a
Karassian,
good show.
something like that. Yeah, she went on CNN and brought up that fact, about like how an Israeli cyber director who works directly under Netanyahu came over here, got caught in an FBI pedophile sting, and immediately was
Not to mention
released.
explicitly state,
And CNN
what
just
he was going to do: leave Israel, and nothing was going to happen. Like, there's apparently an 11-minute video
Yeah.
of him telling police officers exactly what he was going to do, and it exactly happened. But continue.
And that's
Yeah.
exactly how it happened. And she brings this up on CNN, and they immediately hush her up and immediately go to the next segment. It's clear how much Israel controls this country. We've seen Netanyahu go on. This is the thing. Netanyahu speaks English because he learned English in America. He went to school in America. So he speaks English when he's trying to spread his propaganda to the Western audience. He speaks in Hebrew when he's actually stating what he wants to say to
Yep.
the Israeli people. Whenever he speaks in English, he'll say stuff like, "Oh, well, my government was not aware of this. We tried our best, but we will work with the United States to extradite the necessary parties based off what we find." I'm doing more of a Slavic accent than a fake Polish accent. I can't copy the evil voice. But then he'll speak, and then he'll say the same stuff about like Gaza. He'll say stuff like, "Oh, we're just trying to make sure the Hamas fighters." It's so funny how he says Hamas. It's Hamas. We're trying to find the Hamas fighters. We're just bombing hospitals on accident. We're not doing them on purpose. We swear. And then in Hebrew, he'll say stuff like, "We will block all aid to Gaza. They will starve for staying in our lands. We will bomb their hospitals, bomb their schools." And I'm like, dude, you can literally go on Apple, go watch Hebrew TV, Israeli TV with captions on, because they have that technology nowadays, and you'll see the wicked shit these people talk about. And Americans, the young Americans, people under 50, overwhelmingly hate
Oh yeah,
Israel.
without a doubt.
So even among Republicans, it's 50-50. The younger you go, the more they hate Israel. Among Democrats, 91% don't like Israel. 91%. Among the young Democrats, it's like 95. And I remember this is a big thing, what the DNC was actually having to deal with. So there was a vote at the DNC the other day where they held a vote for two things. One of them was condemning Israel's actions, and then another one was placing an embargo on Israel weapon sales. Basically, one thing was saying, "Oh, Israel, you need to stop doing that. That's so
Right.
wrong. Israel, that's bad. You can't bomb children and starve them. Israel." And then the second one is saying, "All right, Israel, we've had enough of this. We're not sending any more weapons." The DNC voted for the one where they say, "Israel, stop it. That's bad." And then they said no for the one where they send the weapons, because they're fucking whores. They're part of the military industrial complex. They love their money. They love bombing children that don't affect them. They love death because they benefit from that death, because their donors all support Israel. And the one person who was in attendance at the DNC when they were doing these meetings, like, literally stood up and said, this is an article, and he said, 91% of fucking Democrats don't support Israel. Are you guys fucking kidding? Like, literally, I just said it directly like that. And I'm like, exactly. I'm glad somebody said it. And then Ken, I'm blanking on his last name. Ken, the chairman of the DNC, said, "All right, we'll hold another vote on this matter, and we'll talk more with the young Democrats about what they think." And I'm like, dude, you don't even need to talk with the young Democrats. Right. Talk with any damn Democrat. Literally, fucking 9 out of 10 of them are going to tell you the same damn fucking thing. I should cuss less. But as you can see, I get worked up about how much I hate Israel's control of America. And we just see this from top to bottom, side to right. And that's a big reason why Trump, who ran on this idea of America first, is now suffering so much, because now it's not America first, it's Israel first. You know what I mean? And that's what so many of his supporters are seeing. That's what so many people are seeing, and what's making them lose that support from him. So then you tie this in with these communist light movements, communist state capitalism, honestly, is the most American way to say it if you want to avoid the big scary
Yeah.
C word. State capitalism is still not a Republican nor what Trump was talking about. So then, we get this idea that Trump really is putting in a position where he knows they're going to do poorly. They see the polls too. You know what I mean? Like they may try to fluff up one poll more than the other, Rasmussen more than the other ones,
So
but they see the polls and they see the writing on the wall. So that's why we're seeing Trump make these big moves in order to kind of get redistricting done and also affect the upcoming election. And Trump, as we said, actually just recently appointed a czar to the DHS to oversee election integrity. This czar was one of the people at January
yeah,
6th.
which is ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. Like he's going to put a DHS czar, election integrity, when it came back there that actually like a lot of the reports of the election fraud was actually from Republicans at the state and federal level, like the actual, like a full on, illegal voting, double voting, however you want to portray it. It was, majority of numbers were Republicans. The numbers in fraud for elections are extremely low to even, they're low enough to where it wouldn't even determine the outcome of a race. So it's the evidence there, the numbers are there. So him running on this, he's really trying to solidify his hand on the next election, and he understands that it's crumbling. And just touching on, actually, it's kind of funny how I said that, touching on his hand, should I say. It's been reporting that Trump is having some health issues. His hand,
those swollen
his
ankles.
hand,
His
swollen ankles, and what I've also noticed that someone pointed out that he's doing a lot of his. Not everything is sitting down. There's no more standing up whenever he's doing, whether it's press, like it's always either from sitting down in the Oval Office or sitting down in front of something, giving his speeches. I feel like he hasn't been standing as much in a sense. So I do hope the doctor's able to address it as best as possible. And I do hope they're able to not cover it up, but at least like not make it blatant what's going on, because the way they did the makeup on his hand was god awful. But I hope it's also not a Biden situation where he's ailing, and they're just trying to just get him through 4 years and so forth. But you never know.
Do you know how ironic it would be if come 2028 Trump steps down because of health problems? That's like Kamala. I think I'd laugh.
Hilarious. And I would have. So I was on Twitter real quick, and I saw that. I know we were talking about like the different companies and so forth, having their revenue and/or stake taken by the United States government. So NVIDIA says that any government demand for a revenue share might result in legal action, and also their stock is down 5%. Reporting record quarterly revenue of $46.7 billion. So even though they beat both revenue and EPS expectations, the stock is still sharply down. So I really wonder why. And I also now wonder, with Intel now seeing NVIDIA's response in this sense, I wonder what their response will be for that 10% stake, because that's the difference in those two. NVIDIA is revenue share, while Intel is an actual stake in the company itself.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, NVIDIA is going to be affected massively by the AI bubble when it pops, but the question is always when. You can't tell when it's going to happen. That's the point of the bubble.
Exactly.
And I do think that anytime I look at stocks nowadays, it's always the same thing. It should go down eventually. I'm not going to bet on it going down until I see it clearly go down massively.
So even some more. I got to plug in my laptop real quick, but apparently I got some more information here. Hold on.
And one thing I want to add while you're doing that, one of my favorite quotes, it's by Warren Buffett. It's very applicable, and I honestly refer to it often when I make my investments. The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. The financial markets don't need to make sense. They don't need to. That's the whole. It's human psychology. You know what I mean? It's aside from inflation, which is the only thing that you can really plan for. Everything else is just humans throwing money at things they think will do better and make them money in the future. While the stock market is a speculative market of what the future will be like, speculating future returns.
Exactly. And so the news that I was just reading, I saw someone like go through NVIDIA's report actually. So they saw that two direct customers of NVIDIA were responsible for 44.4% of the total quarter two revenue of the data center. Literally half of NVIDIA's data center revenue for quarter two came just from only two people. That's
I wonder
insane.
who those two
I,
customers
I,
are.
I do wonder, who it's going to be. And, the revenues are going to
Government.
go up
I'd
even
imagine the
more
government.
with their expansion to China now and selling of those chips and so forth. So
You know,
it's
it'll
going to
be
be interesting.
it will be because China and Taiwan are always aggressively pushing forward with their chip manufacturing. And that's one argument that I've actually seen in support of Trump taking over part of Intel is that, oh, well, it's good for the government to be involved in such a global important industry. This way, the government can make sure that our chip making needs are directly met by, investing into Intel or whatever company they own a share
Yeah.
of so they can stay up to market, top of date. And that's not a bad argument. And that's what China and Taiwan do with the Taiwanese State Manufacturing Company, with China and their chip manufacturing. But the big question is NVIDIA is solely private. They've done a
Yeah.
fantastic job becoming the world's best with exclusive chips. So then, if we're going to be arguing about the government getting involved to make that better, okay, well, then how did the non government involvement get NVIDIA to where they are? You know what I mean? And two, Intel is an example of if we do want the government to get involved to better up this company, do we really trust the American government to do that? I'm sure the Chinese government's much more efficient at the idea of state capitalism. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
The
No, without
government
a doubt.
controlling companies and then dictating what's can be done. They've been doing that for decades. You know what I mean? And the United States famously has a horribly inefficient government. And I remember I saw this one stat. No, it was an article that I read regarding the government's ability of training people. So it was a program put in place. One of them was the government would offer you training for a trade program. The other one was jobs would offer you that same training for trade programs. And it
Mhm.
was just comparing the results of the two. Of the results of the government training, only 1 out of 5 individuals who partook in government training were able to get a job in the trade industry. Among
Wow.
people who got private training, literally the opposite. Around 80% were able to get jobs in the trade market, in the trade
Mhm.
industry. So top to bottom, we always in America, it's easy to see the corporations and companies do better for their needs than the government would. The government's
Yeah.
needs aren't tied to the company's needs, which
No,
is
they're not.
different than what it is for China and Taiwan, where China,
It's all
the
unison, basically, right?
the China isn't a global market. You know what I mean? Companies in America compete for global money to be the top company people want to invest in. They want to be able to have the latest and greatest inventions for their own growth. Companies in China, because they have to work with the Chinese government, are doing it for the country of China. And anything they're doing, it's at the end of the day to bolster China. And
Right.
that's because the government controls these companies either indirectly with sanctions, financial things, and such as that, like what happened with Jack Ma and Alibaba, where they basically took the company away from him after he descended from
Yeah.
them. And that's option A: either lose your company to China, the Chinese government, or option B: you do what the Chinese government says.
Right.
Now, I'm sure we can all agree that's not how we want to do things in America because, well, it's in it. We wouldn't do it well. Arguments for communism aside, which there isn't really that many good arguments for it. It just wouldn't work for us because our government is bad at what it does. We have lawyers en masse in Congress. We don't have engineers and scientists and accountants who know business. We don't have investors and XYZ people who have experience for the decades in these fields that know what's needed to be done to be competitive. We have lawyers whose jobs is literally to make law and interpret law. What do these people know the slightest bit about chip manufacturing and how to update and how to
Right.
upscale, the manufacturing needs for America? And that's why we leave it to the experts, aka the capitalists. the people who run NVIDIA, the people who run these companies. And if they don't do it well, then they're going to suffer and other companies are going to do it better, as we see now with Intel going down, NVIDIA going up. So it's not a poor argument that based off of other countries' experiences that having some state control of a chip manufacturer or a very important national industry would benefit that company or that industry. But the United States is not a government that can do that well based off of our own experience trying to get people in getting involved in the private market.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's why we haven't, I feel like that's why the government hasn't really tried to penetrate too much in that private sector for a lot of things in a way, because they understand that, that's why there's two separate sectors, because they understand how to run their rules, their regulations, procedures. And once we come in, once the government comes in, should I say, it just becomes all messed up and, not adequate to exactly what it was on the private side.
Yeah.
And just one another tidbit before we get to our last section here. So we'll probably cover this more in the next episode because there's a lot of good information now falling out. But so the CBO apparently stated that Trump's tax law cuts income for the poorest 10% by $1,200 per year.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good. And once these reports are used in town halls and debates and so forth, which I hope they are, by some spineful Democrats, the tables are going to turn.
We've already seen some pretty heated town halls.
Yeah, we definitely have, and we'll definitely cover that in our next episode. But just want to give a few of our last moments to the tragic events that happened at the Minneapolis school today. So there's a mass shooting at I don't know, Annunciation. Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis killed 2 children, age 8 and 10, and injured 17, 14 children, 3 adults. The suspect, Robert Westman, 23, a former student, fired through the window during mass before self-inflicting a wound, basically committing suicide. So
his mom worked at that church too, retired 2 years ago. I saw that in the report I saw. That's god awful. Yeah. I mean, just seeing things like this to level it, I understand it. The level of scaredness there is to even go out of your door, because you have individuals that can't even go to a Catholic school for mass. You can't go to an actual regular school, can't go to a movie, and things of that nature are now becoming sacred in a sense when it comes to safety, because you have things of these natures taking place on almost on a daily basis. I think there's been in the last 2 weeks 2 or 3 mass shootings, if I'm not mistaken. I know there were some false calls here and there, which is irreprehensible to even think about that someone can do that in a sense, and be okay with calling in a fake school shooting or mass shooting or thing of that nature. But I actually had something similar happen when I was in high school. It wasn't a shooting; it was a bomb threat. Yeah,
I think bomb threats are more widely used compared to like faking or calling in school and saying you're faking a mass shooting or something of that.
Shooting carries more weight with it because it's like, oh wow, this actually does happen.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Like when's the last time somebody bombed a school? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So we do. I especially hope that legislators see this as a way to work on both fronts. One front being, 3 fronts that I say: the hate front for one piece, the mental health piece of it, and as well as the gun control piece. And I know that's not going to be something that they're going to want to do. It's going to be, hopes and prayers as it has always been, but there's action that needs to be taken. Apparently Westman had a YouTube video and a manifesto that was anti-Trump, pro-Russia, and pro-trans as well. So it's like,
of course,
right, of course, but it's like, legislators need to make laws that are checking in on our younger generations, as their errored laws that they have made have put them in such a way that they do these sorts of things, or they feel like this is okay to do, to let out how I'm feeling in a certain way, lashing out like that, or lashing out and using this as a mechanism for that. I think there needs to be a more rehabilitative method and procedure in place throughout all the states. I feel like 988 gets done, the suicide hotline, and so forth. But there needs to be further steps so that we're not seeing 14 children die and two 8 to 10 year olds die. That's not something that I want to be reading on a daily basis. Our legislators need to take action and actually put in gun control legislation that is not going to curtail what the founding fathers put in place with the Second Amendment, which I think is, if you can walk a fine, thin line by doing that, making it in a way that it doesn't, have individuals think that the government's going to overthrow, or the government's going to take all their guns, like how Kamala was saying about the gun buyback in a sense, which I don't think was a good idea in its sense.
Horrible
and
idea.
even saying it lost the election realistically.
How wouldn't it be surprised? Gun buybacks are so stupid.
Yeah, it's not a great idea, but definitely just like as some last words for this episode, I truly feel for the parents that are going through this, and I do hope our legislators learn from this and they're able to put together meaningful legislation. Because I could see something of that nature coming down the pipe as these instances have happened. What we're also going to do, we're going to have our next poll be about gun control, given seeing where people stand on that issue and so forth, and we can talk about that as well on tomorrow's episode. Maybe not tomorrow's episode, but on the next episode. But as always,
I want to add one thing before
go
the
ahead.
episode. It's always tragic when people lose their lives, and I think the big thing that America could really benefit from is a much more thorough system for mental health, from helping people who have mental health issues, and also then from people who do have mental health issues, making sure they can't get a gun. And
that should be the first step.
Yeah, that should be the first step. And I know this is an unpopular opinion among the progressive left, but transgenderism is quite literally a mental illness. Yeah. And I don't care if you have gone to therapy for 5 years. If you have gender dysmorphia to the point where you are saying that this isn't the body I belong in, that's not mental health. No, you're not mentally healthy.
No, you're not. And you don't know what those like hormones and the drugs that they're putting in their body to transform their body. You don't know what that's doing to the psyche or the consciousness of the individual themselves.
Dude, a change in testosterone alone can make a man feel enraged even if he's a calm man. You know what I mean? Chemicals in the brain really dictate what we feel and what we do. And if somebody has a very clear problem with that, you know what I mean? We need to take that in mind when it comes to things like allowing these people to have weapons. Right. And I actually am not sure if they were able to just get a gun from their parents, you know what I mean? Like is the case most oftenly, or if they went out and bought it. But it's a shame what happened. And it's sad to see innocent people die because of this country taking a backseat to mental health issues.
It's the recklessness of it.
It really is. Like they're just going to point fingers at things that aren't going to change anything. They're not going to sign laws that make anything better. And then the wheel just keeps on turning. It's sad. I hope the people who have lost their lives find peace. I hope the people who lost loved ones find peace. And I hope the injured people pull out fine and recover from this horrible incident.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope it's really, something that's learned from for our legislators. As I said, I'm anticipating legislation coming down the pipe federally on this. I wouldn't, it's a prime opportunity for something, to be done. And there have been too many opportunities where something should have been done and nothing has been done. So hopefully, if something like that comes down the pipe, be sure to tune into Behind the Ballot for our next episode to cover it. And as always, we appreciate our listeners. We appreciate everyone that shares the podcast, and we appreciate your support as well. Thank you again. And this is Mikhail Jenkins, and I'm signing off.
God bless America. I hope you guys all have a good